Welcome to the Treasure of Glory podcast. My name is James Perkins, and I really appreciate you taking the time to check this out. If you want to know more about this ministry, go to treasureofglory.com, and there I have some blog articles with topics ranging from the end times, quantum physics, the glory of God, how to be transformed, a lot of different things. I also have some free e-courses. I highly recommend the Discipleship e-course because it will help you grow as a disciple, but not just a disciple, but how to make disciples, because that was the Great Commission after all, go and make disciples. And that's the point of the course, is to show you how to do that. I also have a Rapture e-course that will examine what the Bible says about the rapture. Is it pre-tribulation? Is it mid-trib? Is it pre-wrath? Is it post-trib? There's so many different views on the rapture. And this course, I believe, does a very good job of proving the post-tribulation rapture is the most biblical view. So it's all there for the taking. You can do what you want with it. I even have printable handouts that you can edit to make it appropriate for your setting, whatever you're doing, small group or otherwise. So have fun with that. So today, we're going to talk about discipleship. What does it mean to be a disciple? What did Jesus mean when he said, "Follow me, be my disciple"? Well, I can assure you that Jesus didn't mean that he wants to just be an accessory in your life. He didn't mean that he wants to live in the periphery of your life. Okay, he was talking about something very radical. Consider what Jesus said in Luke 14:25-33. Now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, "If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple." This is crazy talk. Is Jesus really saying that we must hate our own family members to follow him? No, that is not at all what Jesus is saying here. He's trying to make a point by being extreme. Jesus did say to love your enemies in Matthew 5:44. So why would he want you to hate your family? He's trying to say that the love we have for our family should look like hate in comparison to our love and devotion to Jesus. Just think about how much you love your parents, spouse, and children. It's a very real love. And just imagine loving Jesus so much more that your love for your family looks like hate. How can you possibly do this? Well, stick around and I'll show you. Now let's go on in Luke's passage in verse 27. "Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple." As if the first statement wasn't strange enough to the hearers, Jesus now asks them to pick up a device used for torture and execution. Do you know of anybody else who starts movements this way? Usually it's follow me and I'll make you a millionaire, follow me and I'll show you how to have a great life. Right? Where do we sign up for that? But no, Jesus walks around saying, if you want to follow me, you got to pick up your cross. Well, in today's terminology, he could say something like, pick up your electric chair, or pick up your hangman's noose and follow me. In other words, be willing to face torture and even death in your Christian walk. In today's culture, where we want to take the easy way, we don't want to stick our neck out and do anything controversial or offend anybody, most people are going to walk away from a message like this. Nobody wants to carry a cross. If you think about it, nobody wants to be committed to anything that's going to require anything out of them. We all want something for nothing. We all want the benefits of being a Christian, but we don't want the sacrifice. We want the glory, but we don't want the cross. And it doesn't work that way. Now let's go on with Jesus' teaching in verse 28. "For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid a foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it will begin to mock him, saying, 'This man began to build and was not able to finish.' Or what king, going out to encounter another king in war, will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000? And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple." I sometimes wonder if we are making true disciples if we neglect to tell people to count the cost. We're so excited to get people saved, but we forget to tell them that there's more to just getting saved and that's it. And are we warning people that, you're not signing up for a walk in the park? Christianity is not a cruise ship, it's a battleship. This isn't going to be easy, and are we telling people this? We're so good about telling people about the love of God and all the easy stuff. But are we telling people the real dangers that can come by being a disciple of Jesus? Are we making it too easy and giving people the wrong ideas about discipleship? We need to make sure individuals understand exactly what they are signing up for. And we need to be honest up front and tell them that the Christian life is not easy, and you are sure to run into hardships and persecution if you walk with Jesus, because that is the road that all disciples have to take. It's a lonely road, it's a hard road, but you know where it leads to? Eternal life and glory, and it's worth it. All right, let's look at another passage that shows how radical Jesus' call was to discipleship. It is written in Matthew chapter 8, verses 18 through 22. Now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. And a scribe came up and said to him, "Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." Another of the disciples said to him, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." And Jesus said to him, "Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead." Can you imagine hearing something like this today? It is socially unacceptable to skip your own father's funeral. So I'm sure this disciple struggled with what to do. Just think about what your family would think of you if you chose to skip your own father's funeral to go do something for Jesus. This kind of radical commitment may seem strange to us, but this is what Jesus demands of us. Jesus also told his disciples that we would be handed over to local councils, flogged in the synagogues, you can see Matthew 10:17, and hated by everyone because of him. With a message like this, it's a miracle Jesus got anyone to follow him at all. So what we have so far is you have to hate your family, you have to pick up your cross, renounce everything to follow Jesus, face persecution, floggings, and being hated. The obvious question at this point is, why would I follow a man who requires such radical devotion? What was so special about Jesus of Nazareth that he would be worth all of that? Before I commit to something so crazy, I want to make sure that this person is legit. I want to know some things first. First of all, I want to know, was Jesus even a real person? Secondly, I want to know, was Jesus really the fulfillment of ancient prophecies? And thirdly, did Jesus really rise from the dead? Let's begin with the first question. Was Jesus a real person in space and time? Was Jesus a mythological figure like Zeus, Osiris, or Hercules? Is there historical evidence for Jesus' life? Believe it or not, there are people who doubt Jesus ever lived. But you know what? There's quite a bit of evidence to prove Jesus of Nazareth was a real historical figure. Let me give you some examples. First, let's look at Tacitus, a Roman historian who lived 55 to 120 AD. He wrote about the execution of Jesus. Now, it's important to note that Tacitus was not a follower of Jesus. He had no reason to lie, and this is what he said. Nero fastened the guilt of the burnings of Rome and inflicted the most exquisite tortures on a class hated for their abominations, called Christians by the populace. Christus, from whom the name had its origin, suffered the extreme penalty during the reign of Tiberius at the hands of one of our procurators, Pontius Pilate. And then you have the Jewish historian, Josephus, who lived 37 to 100 AD. He also documented the crucifixion of Christ, and this is what he wrote. When Pilate, upon hearing him accused by men of the highest standing amongst us, had condemned him to be crucified. Then you've got Lucian of Samusoda, who lived 125 to 180 AD, and he was a Greek satirist who also wrote about the life and death of Christ. Here's what he wrote. The Christians, worship a man to this day, the distinguished personage who introduced their novel rites and was crucified on that account. Now here's the very interesting one. This comes from the Greek philosopher Celsus from the 2nd century, and this is what he wrote. Jesus, on account of his poverty, was hired out to Egypt. While there, he acquired certain powers. He returned home highly elated at possessing these powers, and on the strength of them gave himself out to be a god. It was by means of sorcery that he was able to accomplish the wonders which he performed. Let us believe that these cures, or the resurrection, or the feeding of the multitude with a few loaves, these are nothing more than tricks of jugglers. It is by the names of certain demons, and by the use of the incantations that the Christians appear to be possessed by miraculous power. What I find interesting about Celsus is how he tries so desperately to discredit the miracles of Jesus by attributing them to the power of demons. This is actually an acknowledgement of Jesus' miraculous power. By shifting the source of the power to Satan, that only gives more weight to the rumors Jesus was indeed a miracle worker. No one denied that something powerful was going on in Jesus' life, but they didn't know the source of his power. So we have sources outside of the New Testament that talk about Jesus having miraculous power. We also see that he was real. He was crucified. So far, the Gospels look pretty accurate, don't they? So now for the second question. Did Jesus really fulfill ancient prophecies? There are approximately 400 prophecies in the Old Testament concerning the coming Messiah. The probability that any one person could fulfill just 8 of them is 1 in 100 quadrillion. That's 10 to the 17th power. So there's no other person it could possibly be. It's either Jesus or it's no one. And the fact that Jesus fulfilled so many of them proves that he really was the fulfillment. Now, when we say the probability of one person fulfilling just 8 prophecies is 1 in 100 quadrillion, nobody knows what that means. We can't comprehend numbers that big. So let me share with you something that I read in one of Lee Strobel's books. He was a former atheist, and he became a Christian after doing much research. And he did some calculations to try to figure out what this would look like in a way our brains can comprehend. And this is what he wrote. I imagined the entire world being covered with white tiles that were 1.5 inches square, every bit of dry land on the planet, with the bottom of just one tile painted red. Then I pictured a person being allowed to wander for a lifetime around all 7 continents. He would be permitted to bend down only one time and pick up a piece of tile. What are the odds it would be the one tile whose reverse side was painted red? The odds would be the same as just 8 of the Old Testament prophecies coming true in any one person throughout history. So there just simply isn't another human in history that can even come close to fulfilling all that Jesus fulfilled. There cannot be another Messiah. Why the Jews are waiting for their Messiah, I have no idea. He already came. Let me just share with you some of these prophecies. Micah, writing about 700 BC, predicted the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. So here's what he wrote in Micah 5:2. But you, O Bethlehem Ephrathah, who are too little to be among the clans of Judah, from you shall come forth for me one who is to be ruler in Israel, whose coming forth is from old, from ancient days. Matthew 2:1-6 records the fulfillment of this prophecy by stating that Jesus was born in Bethlehem. How interesting it is that the bread of life was born in the house of bread, which is what Bethlehem means in Hebrew. The prophet Isaiah wrote some of the most amazing prophecies concerning the Messiah. In the 7th chapter, he predicted the virgin birth, and we all know the story of Jesus being born to the Virgin Mary. But even more amazing than this prediction, he actually wrote in amazing detail the suffering and death of the Messiah. Let's look at the 53rd chapter of Isaiah. I'm going to start in verse 3. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And as one from whom men hide their faces, he was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. and upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace, and with his wounds we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one to his own way, and the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed, and he was afflicted, yet he opened not his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, and like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, stricken for the transgression of my people? And they made his grave with the wicked, and with the rich man in his death, although he had done no violence, and there was no deceit in his mouth. Yet it was the Lord's will to crush him. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, he shall see his offspring. He shall prolong his days. The will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied. By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. Does that not sound like Jesus? Did Jesus not go to the cross and take the sin of the world upon himself? God laid on him the iniquity of us all. He was crushed for our transgressions. Who else could this be talking about? In college I asked my Hebrew professor who this was talking about, and he said the nation of Israel. I'm like, how do you get Israel out of this? But that just shows you the spiritual blindness that some people have, that they cannot see Jesus in these prophecies. It takes the Holy Spirit to open our eyes so we can see it. Here's another amazing prophecy from the 22nd Psalm, written approximately 1,000 years before Christ. This is what it says in verses 6 through 8. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by mankind and despised by the people. All who see me mock me. They make mouths at me. They wag their heads. He trusts in the Lord. Let him deliver him. Let him rescue him, for he delights in him. This was fulfilled in Matthew 27:43, when the scribes and elders said, He trusts in God. Let God deliver him now, if he desires him. For he said, I am the Son of God. See, they said this when Jesus was up on the cross. And then further in Psalm 22, we read, I am poured out like water, and all my bones are out of joint. This was common when criminals were crucified. They had to dislocate the victim's shoulders to nail them to the cross. Jesus also lost a lot of blood and felt like he was poured out like water. Then verses 14 and 15, My heart is like wax. It is melted within my breast. My strength is dried up like a potsherd, and my tongue sticks to my jaws. You lay me in the dust of death. When Jesus was on the cross, he told the people around the cross that he was thirsty, and they got him a sponge dipped in wine vinegar to give him a drink. You can read this in John chapter 19, verses 28 and 29. Now let's continue in Psalm 22, verse 16. For dogs encompass me, a company of evildoers encircles me. They have pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. They stare and gloat over me. They divide my garments among them, and for my clothing they cast lots. Jesus' hands and feet were pierced when they nailed him to the cross, fulfilling this prophecy. Add to this the fact that as Jesus was suspended on the cross, the Roman guards overseeing the execution divided Jesus' garments among them by casting lots. Isn't it amazing that Jesus fulfilled these prophecies so literally? These were not just vague prophecies that anybody could fulfill. No, he fulfilled them to the letter. So I think a pretty solid case can be made that Jesus of Nazareth was indeed a real person who existed in history. An equally strong case can be made that Jesus is the only man in history that could even come close to being the Messiah prophesied about in the Old Testament. But those two facts alone don't mean he is worth everything we have to give up to follow him. Buddha was real, and so was Muhammad. So why not follow them? In the next lesson, we're going to examine the resurrection, which, if true, is a game changer. If Jesus was really raised from the dead, then that puts him in a different class than all the other founders of major world religions. If he was raised from the dead, It also means he is worth the cross we have to carry. He's worth the floggings, and he's worth the persecution, and even missing important funerals, and all the other crazy things we have to do and give up to follow him. So if you've ever wondered about the resurrection and if it's true, and if there's any evidence to show that it's true, then you don't want to miss the next episode. So as we close, I just want to ask you a question. Are you a disciple of Christ? And how's it going? How is your discipleship walk? Are you following closely at your master's heels? Or are you kind of falling behind? You got to keep up with Jesus. He doesn't sit still very long. He does demand a lot out of us. So I just want to ask you, how is your discipleship walk going? If it's not going so well, and you've fallen behind like all of us do at times, I want to encourage you to stick around for all of the episodes coming up, because we're going to spend a lot of time talking about discipleship, how to grow as a disciple, and then how to go make disciples. So you definitely don't want to miss the material we're going to cover in subsequent lessons. So, God bless you, and I will see you in the next episode.